glad you're all here. This is an important thing for me to hear from everyone, what your concerns are, what your questions are, anything that I can be candid with you about, that I can't break confidential things, I'll be happy to share with you out there. So we can talk about anything from library to safety, traffic, housing, whatever you'd like to talk about. I'm here to answer your questions and listen to what you have to say. More so.
Okay, I couldn't stay for all of the planning commission meeting last week. Had to leave early, so I listened to the YouTube thing from where I left off. I have a question pertaining to a statement that you made pertaining to, I may have taken it wrong, I just want you to help me understand it.
Okay.
I've been in the village longer than I wanted to admit, and from my experience, you have, if you want your voice heard, it's too late when something goes to a board meeting, in my opinion, because at that point, the board usually votes the way the committee has voted, and because they've looked at everything. So my question is, did I misunderstand you when you feel that citizens have been getting involved too early? Because there is such thing as being too late. I'm trying to determine where the line is.
Okay, so one, everybody's free to say whatever they want to say at any time. We know that. That's one of the rights of citizens. My comment was more geared to, we hadn't even had a discussion at the plan commission level, so none of the plan commissioners even talked about it, which is what our goal is, to always get that information, start hearing from the citizens and things. My belief is that using the media as a tool to shape public opinion before the group even has to, I think that's going across where it should be. That's what I felt was being done in the Tribune ahead of that meeting. Without having any of the facts of the situation, it was put in the paper beforehand, given an opinion, and basically trying to, I don't want to say sway, I guess sway public opinion maybe, before the meeting took place. That's why I said what I said. Everybody's entitled to state things, but before we even have a chance to hear any of the facts ourselves, from our attorneys, from our staff, we're getting the public opinion thing out there before we even have that opportunity.
Okay,
So
but
we're on the defensive on something we don't really need to be on the defensive about.
so you're not saying that it wasn't okay to come to the meeting and to, okay.
Not at all.
I couldn't figure out exactly
Not at all.
what was being said there, and that's what I'm trying to figure out. It was okay to come to the meeting and talk about differences of how we saw it and.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I guess I have trouble with the fact, I mean, I understand where you're coming from, and I can certainly see it from that point of view. What I have trouble with is there was a planning commission vote that had happened to move forward with the language, and the planning commission had said that it was okay. The language was okay. There were no comments or feedback at that point, so help me understand the process a little bit.
When you said the language, okay, which part are you talking about?
You guys voted on approving the language to move forward to a floor vote.
At the meeting or before the meeting?
Before, at the previous meeting in August.
I don't believe we voted anything at that meeting.
Well,
I'd
you-
have to go back and look.
okay,
I don't think
so-
I voted anything. I think we moved things up forward.
So, okay,
That's all.
we
We actually didn't talk about or have any discussions about it.
okay, so what you're saying, so I am actively listening. You guys approved the language to move forward, no discussion happened, and there was the opportunity to give public input at that point? Is that what you're trying to say?
I don't recall at that previous meeting.
Okay.
That's
No,
what I'm
that-
looking at,
that-
having a discussion about this topic.
Okay, that's fine, I'm trying to understand the process.
Okay.
And there
I'm
are
not-
there are early meetings, Chris, where we talked about very general concepts of zoning and what they wanted staff to work on in terms of language development.
Well, we didn't have any votes or anything. We may have directed staff to gather information for us.
No, I remember that process very clearly, and that was done very well, and then the ordinance language was released in August, prior to the August planning commission meeting, and at that meeting, you guys reviewed it and directed staff to move forward with the planning commission vote, at least that's my recollection.
Move forward to hold a public hearing.
Yes.
That may be, but I don't know if you definitely didn't dive into the depths of the language.
I don't recall having any discussion other than
Okay.
to move it forward.
So
to have a
what,
public hearing.
so you are looking, so what you are looking for is public input at the moment that the planning commission is going to have their broader discussion. Is that what you were saying?
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
Can I add one thing too?
Sure.
Said the meeting that Ann's referring to, you said it would be
The first
good.
meeting or the second meeting?
The August or the September meeting?
The August meeting.
Okay.
You mentioned too that it would be a good idea to have the old ordinances right next to the new ones.
Yes,
And that was really helpful when we could
yes.
see that. So I mean, that was a plus for sure, but maybe,
That I remember. Now,
Yeah.
now you're saying that. That's for red line version. Because it was very confusing to
Yeah,
everybody
it was
there,
very
including us,
confusing
so we had
for
that.
everyone.
Yes.
so, and that was a compliment that, it was a good idea so that everybody can see it and be on the same page in that respect, so.
Agreed.
Yeah, and if we could do that in future meetings, so that we would have the information before we actually go, that would be perfect.
All right. Are
So
you-
we might
are you
be-
consulting, Nico?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll put this down unless I need to have something that is for.
Did everybody sign in, by the way? And if you, email would be best if you can include it, because then we'll circle back with follow-ups on these items.
Other questions or comments?
Who do we email about getting something out for advertising on Wannablog?
Village clerk's office.
Just to the clerk itself, to Julie?
Yep, to
Or
Julie.
to front desk.
Or to me, or to Lori Health. Lori Health is the staff person who is the
Okay.
primary manager of the blog.
Okay.
Or if you can put it through the Ask Anything on the front of the website as well. Lori's, we'll include in our email, the best email address to get it to.
Okay.
Does that go
Sometimes
through
just-
a vetting process? Does somebody determine whether or not the information that's sent to village, to the clerk, or to Julie, to go on to Wannablog, does someone actually decide, well, that's not going on, this is good, this will go on? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, generally if it's a public event, open to everybody, I think there's only been a couple times since we've had it, which has been 8 years, that we've questioned something. Maybe there was one related to a church event or something, a religious undertone, where we made a determination not to post it. We may actually have a policy that we established and use in reviewing those things. So the answer is yes, it's vetted, but if it's a public event open to all, I very rarely have seen a situation where we haven't posted it.
Okay, thank you. I don't wonder if it might make sense to repost that information again, so people understand that there is a certain process, that not everything may appear on Wannablog, and these are the rules, similar to what, Roberta puts in the newspaper about, letters to the editor, so to speak, that we don't get an anonymous letter that ain't up in the New York Times, but it won't end up in the Wanakee Tribune, or the Wannablog for that matter.
Yeah, certainly the blog isn't gonna be generated as a place for, a public discourse, or, opinion type pieces on one policy or another.
Okay.
It's geared towards one-way communication information, providing event information. But yes, we'll be happy to share what our policy is and remind people of it.
Very good, thank you.
So I just put a note here too. I don't actually know what the policy is, but I actually have never been consulted on anything that's been sent into Wannablog. So I would ask that, do you think that I should be consulted with everything that comes there or not as a village president?
I don't know.
Or should I leave that to staff to take care of?
How much time do you have?
Well, as Scott said, how many things do we get?
Well,
It's
most of the time, we already scour and gather them and have it
Oh,
published. A lot of times when Lori gets one, she puts these in there months in advance, actually, and then she sets a date when it posts, so
Oh.
most of the time, she's already got it ready to run.
So the Friends of Wanakee, our small group, have planned a TID-TIF training session. Open discussion. Adam Gallagher and Tim Kiefer are going to help us with it. It's October 24th. What kind of information do you need? Do you need like an email address from the Friends also? Can it just be through me? We have an email address for our group also, but can it just show my email? I mean, it's,
Yeah, I think,
okay,
I think so.
Generally, just a way to contact someone if there are any questions.
okay,
That way we know who to direct it to
okay,
if we get a question.
okay.
Yep.
Okay. And if we want to allow the board, do we have to say something specific for you guys to be able to come to it? So that there isn't an issue with a quorum or anything like that? If
So I'm assuming it's open to the public?
it's gonna be open to the public.
So, and when you stated that if we want the board to be there,
No, no.
if you don't want us there, I
No,
don't know.
if we're going to promote the board being there, or whatever, you know.
Yeah,
I would guess probably would be, it's not our meeting, we're not hosting the meeting. I would probably be able to, if I'm having a
Well,
reception or something.
If
probably
you
be able-
desire board members, and if we imagine it's possible that a quorum could attend, which is any more than two or more, then we would probably post that a majority or a quorum of the board may be available there.
okay.
So, I can tell you, that I found our posting policy, which is linked at the very bottom of the blog. You can go there and check it out if you like, but, very basically, events sponsored by village-funded organizations of which the village has membership, local schools will be allowed, given that they're open to the community as a whole. Meeting, listening sessions, or other gatherings held by local, state, or federal elected officials will be allowed, but not within 3 months prior to an election. That must be some kind of elections issue. Events sponsored by community nonprofit organizations shall be allowed, given that such events are open to the community as a whole, and do not promote illegal activities, market or sell a product, or sell a particular illegal service or product, or violate any affirmative action or equal opportunity policies.
Okay.
So that's how it's stated.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Marilyn, you had your hand up.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think that all came about just because of a previous, listening session, where people were wanting to know what
Right.
our TIFs and what do they do.
Mhm.
And that, so these have a lot of value,
Agreed.
because it allows us to learn stuff and be informed.
Absolutely. I'm actually glad that you took it, I'll compliment you that you took it by the horns and did that. Because there were comments at that too, as if maybe we weren't the right ones to do that presentation, that the public can have, where they would like come in to do that and give the facts out about TIF and what's the good, what's the bad, and what we're balancing. So I think it's great, so whoever organized it, thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Thanks.
Any other questions about anything else going on in the village?
I just want to say Main Street really looked nice with all the flowers, and it's just looked so nice. Now they're kind of getting old, but I think it was at Wana Fest time. I thought, oh my goodness, they were just beautiful. That anybody that came through were all a million cars. But, yeah, it just looked really nice.
Thank you. I'll make sure that the Public Works Parks Department.
Do they do those hanging baskets themselves, or how do they, where do they?
So they, I believe they get them from.
Orcas.
Well, it's not Orcas, what's it now?
No, it hasn't.
Hasn't been for years.
But they take care of them. I mean, they go down and water
See
them
me,
and
I go
fertilize
way
them
back.
and do everything to keep them nice for as long as they are.
Yeah.
They last a long time.
Yeah, they just really now.
Saw the water tank
truck a few times
going through.
Yeah, absolutely. And interesting enough, the lower ones
Yeah.
did really well. They're still not.
Yeah.
Even more so than the hanging.
They're beautiful.
Well, I'll tell you the secret, every other watering is not just water, we had Miracle Grow every other day.
Wow.
Really?
That's what does it.
give them their food.
Good gardening tip too, I didn't think you were gonna get any gardening tips here tonight.
I am not a good I'm not a
Don't look like my
Maybe a little
yes.
beer.
If anybody's curious, they cost about $5,000 a year for us to purchase them. That's not including
Yeah, I
the
believe
labor.
it. Yeah,
So that's our
but
investment.
it really
Yeah,
does
pretty.
look nice.
Yeah, it
It looks
makes
very
up for
nice.
the absence
Very
of
nice.
trees. You know, it just, there's sort of the bare spot in the middle of that.
And we take all those trees, but over time, they just, the roots with the sidewalks and everything,
we don't
they
need
just.
Yeah, I remember when it was all over Main Street, you know?
Yeah.
And then they make the sidewalk go crooked, with the roots get big, and no more trees. But I do wanna say, when I drive down West Street behind, what used to be the funeral home, see, I don't know what it is, you know. What is that building they just built, and then that humongous, who approved that big humongous duplex? Who does
So the
approve?
building, which building, I'm not sure.
West Street,
Right behind the funeral?
yeah, where the
Former
funeral home used to
funeral home,
be.
Well, there's something now between that.
Yeah,
What is
it's
that?
the owner of
There's a
that
little
came through.
business there.
And it's a single person business, they said it does home decor, I believe.
Oh, so it's open for business?
Yeah.
I've never seen
I
it.
think she's talking about the duplex.
Well, yeah, that too. The
So then-
duplex is a little
Yeah, so
huge.
we'll come to, so the first thing is the business, that's part of the other business, actually, the same people. own
Oh, it
the
is.
property. And they came in,
Van Reed doesn't own the duplex property.
oh, we're talking about the business, right?
Okay, got it.
And there's no place to park for that business.
Yeah, there's, the parking that was allowed is the lot where the duplex is, actually had a joint thing written into the deed, which allowed them to have a couple parking stalls there.
And I think there's a.
No, I would
There's easement for 5 spaces on that
I
property.
saw that. I thought
Yeah,
it belonged to the
it's an
duplex.
easement that was granted by that owner to go in 50 feet. I live
Yeah.
2 houses from the funeral home,
Okay.
and yeah, that's how it all worked out.
Yeah, I don't know, I mean, I've been by there and I have never seen a car in the parking lot, so I don't know how much traffic.
I see a couple, but not,
Well, they're all on the street.
And which is kind of what she said, it would be very little traffic that would come in. I think they have a lot of samples and various things.
Have you seen that big duplex?
I have seen the big duplex.
It's like an elephant next to a mouse.
Yes,
You agree with that?
it's big.
It's,
I'm glad that the trees were there.
yeah.
As a canopy barrier around the majority of the building. It does meet all the setback requirements of it. It does meet the height requirements.
Its scale as compared to the other houses is not appropriate.
Its scale is a little bit bigger. That I agree.
Does somebody from Monarchy, do they own it, that they should have realized it was
I
gonna be
believe
like
the local
an
person.
elephant?
I can.
There's a young guy who was intending to occupy at least part of it, and he seemed to be local, somewhat local. I met him a couple times when he was building it.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
I believe that was approved through a conditional use permit process, so we can provide the minutes from that process, but I believe that was to allow the duplex use.
Oh, anyway, I'm glad I don't live next door.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I have a question. It definitely was just a partial lot, because I talked to Bob Fleiner, and he told me how that other portion got off of that lot. And it just seems that, there's no concern about mass and density. We're concerned about setbacks and heights, but that there doesn't seem to be any formal policy about how mass and density affect buildings that have been there previously.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that there's not any concern for it, or there's not any thinking about that and what's happening. I think we take that very seriously, and what we're doing with our mass and our density. In that area, I'm sure some of you know, because you live there, there's many houses that have turned into duplexes and other things as well in that area.
But they haven't increased their footprint.
Agreed, some of them just did it and didn't really ask or didn't go through the proper cleaning process as well. When they did that, which is another separate issue that needs to be addressed. But
Alex loved
at
it.
the end. Not when it was originally there, probably, but at the end, it was definitely,
Yes,
we'll
we'll get
look
used
at
to
that.
it.
The treatment, my opinion is the treatment facing west isn't terrible, but certainly they ignored second from an aesthetic perspective, a design perspective, and it would have been, if I were building the house, I would have given attention to both street facades.
Well, they also ignored
But-
the neighbor
Oh my
next door.
goodness, right next door, it's like,
You know,
Well, the owner is Derek Daly, by the way, he lives on Littleton Way, so local person.
I have an example, I guess, and maybe
But it's not owner occupied.
I don't want this to sound in a bad way, but when you have a property, you buy a property, you build your home, you really don't have all that much control of what somebody next door is gonna build there, other than that. And I have an example of myself, when we purchased a separate home, and we have a beautiful view of the bluffs and the lake and everything else, and our neighbor ended up putting a huge garage directly in front of our view.
Yeah.
I know,
So we
what
lost
can you
that.
do?
And what can we do? Nothing.
Nothing.
Just their property. So it's a similar
Well,
situation.
why can't the village come up with a different zoning to stop that again? Now that everybody's seen the duplex, they understand that it's in the wrong place, it's the wrong structure, box on a box with a roof on top. If there's another duplex built anywhere else down there, it's gonna be done the same way. Because that's the only way these builders know how to make their money fast. So wouldn't that be great now for the village to come up with the proper ordinances and so forth to stop it from never happening again?
How does that even-
Well, I think you're getting into a tricky area of ownership rights of property. It's zoned single family with conditional use approval for a duplex, I believe, and they went through the legal process to accomplish that. So,
Are we saying what it actually looks like that we should be looking at?
That
The building
That
structure?
duplex was built on 65 feet, supposed to have been 100.
Okay.
So when they came in for that, he up front said that it was going to be over 75 or 1,700 square foot each side. Someone up there in the planning department, or someone that looks at blueprints up there, should have said, whoa, does everybody realize how big this is going to be? In that, the oldest neighborhood in Wanakee, does anybody understand how big this thing's going to look? It would look great out on a tract home area, like they all look on a new development area where they have their row of duplexes. That's what that duplex is. Now, what I would have thought someone up in the planning department would have stood up and said, wait a minute, why don't we bring this person in and say, look, can you make it look more like a semi-Victorian style, Midwestern farmhouse style, like the rest of the neighborhood kind of looks like, and still be a duplex, but you blend it in. And I was amazed that no one up there, not one person stood up and said, wait a minute, are we going to put this tract duplex home in the oldest residential district in Wanakee, the oldest street in Wanakee? I was amazed. And then, like what was said, it was put so that the driveways are out on on West Street. There's no front porch. It doesn't represent anything in the neighborhood. But yet you go outside, you go out to, south or the east or the west, and all those homes are heavily controlled as to what can be built there, how it can be built. You don't see that out there unless it's the initial one block coming into those development areas where you always see the duplexes lined up.
Yeah, Woodland Drive.
So I would have thought someone up there would have, had the common sense to say, wait a minute, 1,700 square foot, both sides, one side, how are you going to fit it on 65 feet?
I agree with you.
I mean,
A lot of it.
and when I went up to the hall up there and I asked about that, I was told Well, you know, I said, I know it's 65 feet and there's some kind of hold on the back side of it for a supposed parking lot. Well, I was told, well, you know, I said, are they going to let you build something different on there, or do you know anything about that? Well, no, you'd have to submit your plan or whatever, maybe a small house, I don't know. And I know that a neighbor was gonna bid on it, and neither one of us bid on it because it was only the 65 feet. And, you know, what are you gonna put on there? So, didn't the village have control of that lot?
As far as what could go on it or what couldn't go on it?
Yeah, if there was 70-some thousand against it, wasn't there?
I would guess, oh, you mean the,
The duplex lot.
We had a lien on it for demolition, but we didn't own the property.
we didn't own the property.
That lot, what I understand, it was let go for some 64,000.
Could be, it may have been a county taking, I'm not sure.
That's what I thought. The notice I got, it started out at 76. But if I'd have known that I could have put a duplex on there at 1,700 a side, I'd have bid 90,000 for that lot. So the way I look at it, somebody dropped the ball somewhere on that whole mess. And
The other point is that that's the only duplex down in that area. I mean, you go up and down Division Street where all the duplexes are, many of them are, they're at least all the same, and they look the same, and they're scaled the same, and they create their own kind of little rural neighborhood. And they're, you know, up on Knightsbridge and all of that, there are a lot of duplexes up there.
I
But
don't
this
think
one,
anybody
there's
did.
nothing there that even looked like
it
a
ran it right
duplex.
through.
Other than as you've said, some of the older homes have created additional living space by dividing things up. But it didn't change the footprint, and the footprint of this thing was a, you know, Bigfoot.
Yeah, to what you're getting at, actually, I felt that, I'm gonna put this in the paper. And people are gonna see it on tape anyway, hello, everybody. Savannah Village, I looked at purchasing a lot there at one time, and I thought there was gonna be smaller homes in that area. And the lot we were looking at was tiny, tiny, tiny. And all the homes in there, there's very little yard in between those homes. They have the basic minimum that you can have in there. And I think this duplex kind of created that same feel where you're talking about, which I don't think is right. And
But it's done.
It's done.
But what can we do to, so it won't be done in the future, is kind of the question.
well, I mean, I hope people keep their houses up and we don't have to have a house demolished to end up with an empty lot and that situation. Hopefully that won't occur anymore, but
That could be a cute little playground.
could,
Yeah,
yeah,
gotta have a
potentially.
nice little neighborhood park.
I'm right-handed, so I'm gonna pick, and I don't think she's got a right hand up right now. Don't take it back.
I live on Verlaine Avenue, and it's 400 block, and it's basically ranch-style homes. And I have seen on documentaries where in communities, someone comes in, and I'm on a fairly decent-sized lot, and my house is modestly priced, and the lot's, you know, pretty modestly priced for Wanakee. So what's to prevent somebody from coming in, purchasing my house, and building a big monstrosity on that lot?
Well, there's covenants, there's covenants that are
Zoning code.
yeah, I don't like how the max size of a building.
So is there zoning for each neighborhood as to how large a house can be, or is that just residential code? How does that work? Because every neighborhood seems to have, you know, their style or size of homes, whether they're 2 stories, ranch styles, whatever. Okay, what I'm asking is there anything to prevent somebody from coming in, buying one of those ranch homes and building a house twice as big as the one I have because I'm on a big lot?
It depends on the neighborhood covenants.
There aren't any. This house was built in the 70s.
Well, the older houses there aren't. but you're on Verlaine,
Mhm.
so, 6 Mile Creek?
No, I'm the old end.
Okay.
It's in the water tower side.
The zoning code will lay that out, both permitted and conditional uses. There's also a process to gain a variance if there's a hardship. I was just doing some research up, look this up. I found what the duplex that you're all upset about, went through was a variance request. Not for 100 feet of frontage, like you said, sir, but for the, total amount of square feet that has to be on the lot per unit. So this is the application, this was in December of last year, where it came through the zoning board of appeals. Essentially what happens if someone goes to the zoning board of appeals is because the village staff already rejected their request. So if that's the case, they have an opportunity by our code to present a hardship and seek a variance through the zoning, through the Board of Appeals. And there's, I think, 7 citizens appointed to the ZBA. In this case, it's R3D, according to this. That zoning requires 6,000 square feet of lot per unit. Here the lot is 10,890, he wanted to put 2 units to it. So to have met code, it would have to been 12,000 square feet for 2 units. In this case, what would have happened is the village staff would have said, no, we can't process through as an approved use and give you a permit. So then he applied for the variance and took it to the ZBA, which has a quasi-judicial obligation to review these hardships. Now, the applicant made, as you've seen here, he made the argument that the parking lot easement and adjacency to a commercial building is what generates the undesirable situation with the lot. We don't have to agree with that. The zoning board of appeals, and we can look up the minutes and we'll provide you the minutes. They must have either given the opinion that they agreed with that or they agreed that there was some other type of hardship. Therefore, they granted the variance. Now, what I'm interested in checking, and I'm gonna do this tomorrow, right when I'm back in the office, is this included a site plan drawing. While it's not a tremendous improvement, remember I mentioned the side facing South Street, no, 2nd Street that bothered me?
Yeah.
Here, that looks pretty good right there. This jives with what they did on West, but they did not put any stone on the side facing 2nd. So that, they may not have done what they indicated they would do. And if that in fact is the case and they didn't get some other sort of modification mid-process, I'm going to be going back to our inspectors and have that modified. Again, maybe it's not to everybody's liking, understood, but this is the process they went through. We'll provide the links in the email we send so you can take a look at it for yourself, but that's the legal appropriate process that they pursued.
I would also add, Todd, I looked at this because I actually went through and looked at the meeting minutes and saw that it was a variance process. I also noticed that there might be a slight change in elevation with that shed dormer that also does not exist, but my understanding is with our current code, that type of modification is legally allowed to owners once we approve the project, which is why I keep asking you guys to consider a form-based code that actually does allow even neighborhoods without covenants like ours to have a much clearer vision of what these projects might look like.
My concern about that building is, I imagine all these people on 2nd Street who thought that they had the golden egg, may want to sell their properties. And I could see a bunch of those just lined up along 2nd Street. And, the lots are deep on 2nd Street for their lot. And it just changes the whole concept. And I've often wondered if there shouldn't be an architect involved someplace with the village in terms of the planning commission, or you get the engineering and the village planning type concept, you get all the legalistic type stuff, but nobody really pays attention to the beauty or how things might look or how things might fit in. It would be nice to have that kind of an eye.
Why can't you go back now with this property?
Let me answer her question, if that's okay. Didn't mean to interrupt you. So I think Ed Freer is our person that we look to for that. Ed Freer, in our office, is the one that.
We don't review single families
But we don't.
or duplexes.
So I think what you're requesting, what I'm hearing is that we have an architect that will review
Yeah.
the houses that are going up
You know-
across the village, or just the downtown area, or where are we talking about here?
Well,
In the pre-existing neighborhoods, maybe?
yeah,
Right,
yeah.
without covenants.
But even in general, in total planning, architects have a totally different eye. They see things differently. And
So-
sometimes just their observations are helpful.
Would we see this as something we'd use a full-time staff person, architect,
No,
or are we
no.
talking about
Someone to come in as a consultant?
a
or
consultant
something?
site as needed? And are we gonna have the same person then? With that, I'm just trying to figure out how we would
Yeah.
do the logistics of having that.
I'm
We
just
got
wondering
somebody
what
that's
other,
contracted that we're gonna be able to keep for 20, 30 years hopefully. That would help us with that, because every time the architects all have different visions
right, right, well,
on things,
and,
so.
you know, things change, trends change and stuff, but it's sort of like, you know, we can know what the measurements are, but we really don't have a concept of how it looks.
That wouldn't have been so bad if it were just a single story.
Right.
Yeah, there's some beautiful two stories on Second Street that.
Yeah.
Up there. Absolutely. Sorry, is it Frank?
Yeah, so now, so we know how this went down and why it went down and how it was able to get to this point and get built. So why can't we go back and start with the first application from there and say, well, now if this was changed in the ordinances or the zoning and so on, and this was changed, this process or that process, it would have never gotten through. Why can't we use this as a training property so that it never happens again, and we can start at the beginning of this first application and try to figure out a way to have this type of thing either modified so that it would blend into the neighborhood better, or completely rejected? Because it wouldn't fit into that, into any neighborhood.
So what I'm.
It's no difference than out in the new properties. If there's a lot out there and I buy it, and I go out there and I put up something atrocious that those people aren't, hey, I don't blame those people for being mad. I shouldn't be able to do that. I should not be able to buy that lot and go out there and just put up whatever I want. Say I like concrete. So I go out there and I put up a sterile concrete structure out there for a home with 3 windows in it. And that's it, folks. That you gotta live with. I can see the neighbors, I would hope they would scream. See what I'm saying? So why can't we go back and use this as a teaching example and come up with the type of zoning we need, the type of covenants we need to be able to help stop this?
I think we don't allow, I mean, I know that a lot of newer subdivisions, the architectural design committees and that people have to go through. I think we had to go through, we built our house 70, 80 years ago.
Well, that would be up to development.
Can I do that?
That's new though, that's not
That's right,
existing.
and so I'm trying to figure out how, I hear what you're saying, and how we would have some sort of committee that could look at these things to make sure it fits the neighborhood, that's what you're getting at, I think.
Well, be this neighborhood or out in the new neighborhoods, either place.
Wherever this is.
Wherever it is in the village.
And that was the area where she is, where you're talking about now, that we have some sort of architectural committee, is that something we can do?
So,
We can ask.
so,
Design
I don't know.
for those areas that are in need of it, I guess.
so Madison has the ability for neighbors to lobby for a conservation district. So perhaps it's a conservation district, so the neighbors have to, it's basically a control over, an architectural control and review for non-covenant neighborhoods. And so it's something that the neighbors, if the village allowed us, we could do for ourselves and we could request. And they have very specific, they have a great designation of the process, so maybe that would be something.
Thank you. Why don't you look into that, see where they're at? Please. Dan?
I know you said at the last listening session that by July we were gonna hear about some movement on a historic preservation committee. I know there's a lot of interest in that, and I know a lot of people in this room probably would maybe wanna serve on it, so what's the movement on that in terms of progress?
Todd?
Chris, we've had our hands pretty full on the housing task force and other things, but that is on the burner for putting forward to the plan commission for discussion. We actually had a task force 7-8 years ago that studied the creation of either a historical preservation society or historic preservation commission. So we've got a bunch of research, and we're gonna sort of recraft that memo and explanation. And
Okay,
get
do you
to
have it
that
ready for the next plan commission meeting?
when is that, middle of?
We just had it, so it should be a.
You should be able to have a memo ready.
Okay, look for something on the next plan commission meeting for that. Okay? Now,
I have a question pertaining to process. When there's a variance being looked at, are the neighbors, that are in the area, are they sent a letter or anything?
Yeah, variance is one of those items that, where the law requires notice to neighbors within a particular perimeter. I don't know exactly what it is, but that's outlined in the code too,
Okay.
at a public hearing.
okay. I want to go ahead and get her hand up first, go ahead.
Oh, it's fine. Can you talk a little bit about what the vision for Main Street actually is? I feel like maybe we're at a point where we're either gonna go kind of a little bit more historical, try and keep that charm, or we're gonna kind of redevelop. And I think that choice is approaching more quickly than we can really anticipate. And so it would be really helpful for me to know where the village is anticipating and what kind of data we have for each choice. And then kind of along that, if we're gonna add lots of housing associated with that, are we looking at sections and locations for the railroad so that we kind of alleviate some of the traffic?
Just an aerial view?
Because I know that'll be a long process, but, if we get it started now, 10 years down the road, if we've got, another 5,000 or more people, at least we'll maybe start that, which would be great.
Okay, so. Are we, I'm just gonna have you help me define downtown. Are you saying from division to?
Well, I think that's part of the problem, right, is when people talk about downtown, we don't actually know if you're talking about the Madison and Main Street corner and intersection down to the railroad to, Bacon or Cross Street, or if we're talking division to Q. So help me understand what you talk about, because that'll be helpful.
So my vision.
Okay.
Are you asking for my vision, or are you talking about my vision of what I'd like to see? Or are
Well-
you talking about, what is the village board's vision?
Both would be
Okay, so
helpful.
we have new board members.
Yeah.
We have different opinions of board members of what they may want.
Yeah.
So I can share what my vision is.
So
I
we-
can't speak to their vision. of
Okay,
What they would like to see.
So we don't.
You can in reference to the comp plan, which is what we
Okay.
documented as a bill.
Okay, so that is what we should refer to as
Okay.
the guiding principle document.
So
Okay.
from my perspective on the downtown, I just want to make sure, it's blurry for me.
That's
so
fine.
I'm trying to see where I'm gonna go with it. So here's where's that be? Is it this one?
Yeah.
This one here, right?
Yep.
Okay. How these gonna be there? I don't see much movement in this one right now, next to it, this block.
Okay.
Where you're gonna have Roll Nugget and Rips Bar and the former Hofstra House, and now building, I don't know what else to describe it at this point, that's sitting there. I don't see anything ever during my term developing in this zone. That's, I view that as like the historic spot of the community in that zone that's across there. So this is gonna be the main market, that zone in there.
Yep.
Okay, then we had, is this where the,
Oh, here, let me help you.
I'm just trying to, where you know, that's better for me right there. That's better right there for me. So this was the proposed,
Right here.
Next door
this
down.
one, this one's the proposed wall property, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we were very clear, or I was very clear from the very beginning with that I didn't think it met a lot of the requirements of the community. This part could change. I don't see anything on the housing side changing. I think I see that staying the same. As far as my vision is, I don't see any of the housing in here changing. Let it come down for it to matter. I don't think you're planning to do anything in the area, all right? Right there. I don't think you can, or do.
I've had people from Milwaukee call and ask if they can buy my property.
On that, and they can't really.
Developers.
But they can. It's historic, that's historical. So, the gist of that, I don't see a lot happening from a development outside of housing that's gonna stay here. I haven't been approached, or we haven't been approached other than from Mr. Wall, for developing that whole piece, and it just didn't meet what we were looking for in the requirements. Now, I know as much as you do, go this way, about this. I don't know what's gonna happen there. I know very little about it for a reason, and good reason. Legally, I can stay, and I could have done everything necessary based on what the attorney said. But for our interest in making sure that we didn't have any problems in perception, I took myself out of that. My understanding is that the Legion may sell. I don't know that for sure. Okay? And if they sell, what they're looking at doing is some sort of 54, 55 housing. And we have to go through a long process to get this done, but they have to have certain things done by January 1st because of some tax credits or something that are necessary. And so I don't know that much about that, and as I said. So this could become something for 55 and over housing. My opinion, which doesn't matter, because I won't be voting or talking about it with the board, and I probably shouldn't say anything, but does it fit the neighborhood? These people think so, and these people think so, that are around it? Maybe. Do we have a need for over 55 housing? That's another question. I don't know the answer to that. The Legion is the other ones that are driving it. If they believe they need a new facility or they need a new location, they'll drive this. If they don't want to, let them have it. They'll stay as it is. So it's really on the Legion, not anybody else at this point.
Is that kind of a floodplain area? I mean, we've had problems with, 6 Mile Creek and the rains we've had as of late. 6 Mile Creek has been pretty high at times, and if you're putting over 55 and older housing or any kind of housing back in that area, and you got parking lots and.
I have no idea.
Right.
It has flooded in the past, but whatever the village has done to keep water moving and flowing over the years has been very, very good.
You're stealing my thunder. I was just gonna compliment our planners and our engineers, because we did not have the flooding problems that everybody else around us had.
Yeah,
It
right.
has
And
flooded.
part of that are the ponds that we're putting strategically everywhere to control that water flow and how fast it gets out of those.
Yeah,
And then down the river.
that's been really good.
Westport thanks us as well. Because what we do here in holding things longer saves them.
But the answer to your question is yes, that there is a floodway identified on that property. The library site has floodway identified on the FEMA maps. So those are all unbuildable areas. There's restrictions that.
So they're all, okay.
Oh, yeah. Every property that abuts the creek has.
These guys are all aware, obviously all aware.
Yeah, you can actually go to the Dane County CGI map and pull up the floodplain map and add that layer and look at any single property and see how it impacts the buildable area.
Tucker, can you get down a little bit? This building's not changing. The mark over here, back here, not changing. So, I'm gonna say this on camera so it's clear. I do not intend to put a village pool on the hometown diamond. Okay? That's not what I'm intending to do, to be clear. Because that's something that was actually a concept at one time. Our hometown team plays on this field. They're the ones that really use it. It's more for them than anybody else. Fair? Everybody understand?
Yeah.
At one point, they wanted lights. Lights are always a controversial topic, especially when you're gonna put them in the middle of the village. Okay? And we're gonna get lights out here. So then it was, can we get a ball diamond with lights? Well, if they wanted to move out of here, this might become a really good spot for a community pool. Everybody agree? Right off the village center. It's perfect for us to put it there. Okay? However, that's not happening. Not anyway, anyhow. Okay? To be clear. So that whole area is gonna stay the same. Back down. Oh, sorry, right here. So how I understand what's gonna go over there, it's similar to our apartments that are right across the way.
55 and older, income restrictions.
Yeah, it's similar to what that is right there. So, but if you look, can you look both of them at the same time? This one and that one? This is a lot bigger than that land. Okay?
Is it less apartments?
So, I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's many more units than.
This is probably many more.
I think
Okay.
that's about like 180 or something.
Yeah, but I heard it say scope of scale was similar to this, not this. I think it's just the type, same type.
Same type of
Three-story
housing.
building, similar to what it is. Okay, but as you can see, that land, not even near. That's- Okay, so it wouldn't be nearly as big. That's what I'm getting at.
So then, Main Street is from, what you consider Main Street, when we talk Main Street, are you talking from Division out to Q, or where?
Yeah, I'm going from Division up to Q.
Okay.
And what's really occurring. I don't see any changes within the housing and stuff as far as development goes. That's not my vision of changing. I don't think we have any other roundabouts going either.
Good.
Thank God.
Okay?
They
But
usually
I will
don't
tell
do
you
that.
that I've heard,
Stop signs.
and I believe that they've done an amazing job with traffic and everything on the new roundabout that's going on in there. And I think it's gonna be a much safer environment for cars
it's
going
great.
through.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So-
it's great.
Even when, as they've been going through the construction, I think they've been doing a fantastic job.
The planning and everything that they put into that, with the overhead lights when they first started, they did a super job.
So they're there to be commended. So, if we come down this way, then. Okay, so we really don't have much that's really gonna happen this way. I mean, this land is all wetland and basically conservation, what's the group got? Conservation Board? Who's got this group? Who's the group that was? I'm like that too. This isn't gonna be a problem. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say is it is. Okay, there was talk, this is that way? Yes.
Yeah.
There was talk of, some apartments or something that's going there. Since they originally came in, I don't think we've heard from them.
They withdrawn.
They withdrawn, so they've already gone away from that. So I don't really have any to report on this. Do you have any great users for that kind of space? That's a former veteran clinic, great. We'd love to help them out and get somebody else in there. So, so this is really, nothing's gonna happen. Can you keep going down further a little bit? So now I'm gonna say something controversial. Roberta, you ready for this? No, it's not controversial. The only area that really could get developed out here is this right here, potentially. It's higher ground, good ground, but what's gonna go there, we don't know. Okay? The O'Malley's own that. They own all of this actually, currently. But they're gonna look at giving this to, selling it very expensively to.
In order to conserve it permanent.
So this would be really the only thing that there could be any kind of development that could happen, and we took it forward. We don't know what that'll be though. Nobody's come forward with it.
So where the new funeral home is at outside of town, Windcrest Funeral Home outside of town,
Yeah,
uh,
let's go there.
there's a lot of high property was it to the, on my directions, aren't thinking to the north, I guess.
Up here.
behind-
So this is where,
Yeah, I guess
where's the
that's,
school at?
No, right.
The school's right here, then this gentleman, there's a large home that was built here.
okay.
And then, the Shearings have purchased this land. I
Okay.
think it starts in this area, all up here, and down like a little bit to the south here too.
Yeah, I think it ends up like this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably similar to what it is. There's some wetlands and stuff there through here, so they'll have to avoid those.
But they have been slated for development? is
Yes.
that-
Yep, that's already been approved.
Yeah, you can actually, I think, you can even tell where they've harvested some corn.
Right.
Where they're
Yeah.
gonna send the road corridor. I would be surprised if they're moving dirt this
Oh, yeah,
fall,
there's a
winter.
big,
So they have, I'll just, one quick thing on that, so it's kind of a flip of the other side for what they're looking to do for the plan. So they're gonna have more commercial in this area, and then housing back in this area.
Like, when you say housing, like single-family units?
Single-family homes.
how many?
There's a 250 units lots back there, something like
Wow.
that.
It's shameful that we're losing more farmland.
It's dense. If you want to talk about sprawl, so, go, I mean, I won't pick on Bishop's Bay, but, well, I am. And that, the houses on big lots, that just gets mowed. The therein is the real stressor on farming. This is as dense gets for single family.
Yeah, the fact, Mr. Becker come here, and I don't think he had the intention of selling or doing anything with his farm for many years. He's down to the south now.
Well, plus we've got the separation zone and the count.
And we've got the separation zone and everything to, there's only so much space that we can go. One of the good things of that is our lot, the amount of lots that we have available is shrinking fast in the community.
Good.
And if we don't have any lots available, what happens to the cost of the lots that are available? They go up drastically. And the lower that number gets before they even get developed, the worse it gets. And so we're in this stage planning, I guess is what you would put, or slow planning. If you look at your Sun Prairies and your Veronas and your other places, they're just going really
We don't
fast,
wanna do that.
which we're not. To be clear, we're not. One of the things, you have a choice. Okay, our school district likes growth, and it was just reported, I think, by Roberta in the paper, that Mr. Gutenberg said that, you know, the numbers are higher than they anticipated, which means more revenue to them. Okay, to function at school, for the schools. If we don't have growth, that's bad for our school system. They lose funding there, and go the other direction. So, when we're talking about growth, we have been very consistent in the last 10 years, Todd just talked about this, right around 90 new homes a year. Okay, so it's very easy for us to forecast what we're gonna have for growth over a 10-year span. If you have 90 a year, how many is that? 900. Okay?
I think what the school system is, they're not the ones that necessarily are driving this. I mean, they're reacting to the growth that's happening in the village. Yeah, that's true that they're gonna make money, or that it's not a profit center for them. They get revenue, or they get funds from the state for the, you know, growth in population
Yep.
of their students, but, you know, that's because of housing units that get put up. Once that stops, then the school system is gonna be capped out on the amount of money that it's gonna get from the state. And what's actually gonna happen is we're gonna see property taxes increase, or the school district's portion of property taxes increase. I mean, my school portion of property taxes has stayed pretty level for years because of all the McMansions that are going up in, you know, all around town.
Now, they don't
And
like
that's
to be
great.
called that.
What?
If you put Mick in front of it, it sounds like McDonald's, and they don't really want to be considered McDonald's.
But,
Sorry.
Okay.
I completely hear what you're saying. I
Instead of doing
understand.
both,
So we're in that delicate balance though of, if we don't grow out the farmland, then where do we grow?
up.
Up. So you have a choice, you can go there. Monona is completely landlocked.
That's why
And
they
they're,
have a golf course.
and there's problems that they have right now, significant, where they're having to go up everywhere. And we're fortunate that we're not in that situation, but again, we have a place that people want to live. I just got some statistics, this I'm going to share on Thursday at the Rotary. How many voters do we have in this village right now, do you think? They're signed in, registered. How many think we have in the village?
What's the total population?
Total population is just short of 14,000.
I'd say 95% at least are registered voters. I think people
You're
vote.
down.
It's the
Children.
children. I'm saying 95% of the adults are registered
Let's just
voters.
go with the 95 or close there, about 9,200, right in that area. How many cars do we have in the village that are like?
Twice as many.
Registered?
24,000.
Oh, actually, just over 16,000.
Wow.
So that's almost 2 cars per voter.
Yep.
This voter, I mean, you have 16 to 18 group, granted.
That's an interesting statistic, so then
Okay,
when
so when we
Holt,
talk about traffic, there's a reason we have traffic. People like to drive. I pointed this out on Monday night. We're gonna have traffic no matter where we are. And Roberta put it in the paper. She didn't quite the text I wanted it to be. But, and I'm not saying that, so I'll have my chance to emphasize that again. If you have a society that likes to drive, and people have the cars to do it, they're going to. And any community is gonna have a main drag or 2 that the cars are on. And in Wanakee, we actually have 3 that I do are the big drags. You know what they all are? Q, Main, and what's the other one? Woodland, actually. Woodland, very busy.
Yeah, that's
Very, very busy. Okay?
I think if there was public transportation available,
Yeah.
you know, we might be able to cut down on that, but, you know, when we were looking at the T-wall issue and where parking was gonna be 1.02 or 1.09 slots per place, and you just told us that, you know, there's two cars per registered voter in the community. I mean, that right there kind of says there's some imbalance. We need to start looking at more instead of the 1.09. We need to start looking at 2 or maybe even more for spots available for, you know, homes or apartments.
Yeah, and it's a very valid point. I do think apartments are a little bit different from homes. It's interesting how we used to have 2-car garages, and then I went to 3-car garages, and now there's been a lot of 4-car garages.
Yeah.
being built. So that's just a matter of what's been happening out there.
Yeah, right.
And so apartments may
That's
not be able to
because
get
they're
that, it's very
driving.
expensive in apartments. I know this because my daughter's in one right now. To keep your car. Yeah, the apartment, it's like adding another rent.
Yeah.
To have your car there, so I'm
I wanted to add, when you were talking about what you call these places, I went to a program that was put on by the Historical Society in Madison, and they were describing the architectural style of the homes in the area. And they were, you know, all different periods, and they got to the types of homes that we have out in our burbs, and they said, we just don't know what to call these, so we just call them 3-car garage houses.
Some are 4.
So I have Todd could probably pull it up on the Google map. It's about the intersection of Verleen and Augusta. And I travel through there multiple times a day on my bike. And if you're coming up from the south on Augusta, you know, there's a curve on Verleen right there. And if there's cars parked on the street, you can't see cars coming. You can't hear them because of the trees, and it's very dangerous. I've seen many people nearly get hit there.
So we're leaving Augusta?
Yes, and the street view is a little challenge if you're coming up from the south, because the trees have been trimmed since the image was taken. And especially with people parking cars in their driveways, you have really no view at all. So I was wondering if maybe you could extend the no parking yellow line back a bit further so you could kind of have a view to the west of people coming around the curve. Or some other improvement. I mean, there's a stop sign at the next.
Can you help Chris?
I'll just come up and point.
Perfect.
Right here. And then I usually sit here on my bicycle, and if you're looking this way, you cannot see people coming, because oftentimes this is parked up, or there's cars in these driveways
So
here.
this right here, this is the portion that
This is the
hard to
part
see?
that you cannot see.
All right, so that's the tighter
Yes.
turn, tighter angle, so right there you're thinking.
So you'd like to extend?
Yes, the
some-
yellow,
some yellow
no
areas.
parking line back further, so, because there's a lot of kids that come through there, whether it's in my area or Meadowbrook as a cut through versus going through the roundabouts, and it's just very dangerous. Just maybe have someone go department take a look.
Defining parking.
Well, it's at the next intersection
I'm thinking about the
down.
houses there,
Yeah, no
if we
stop.
take away the parking in front of their house, they might not be excited across the street if we have anything black.
We'll connect with the police department.
Okay.
And you can see fine if you're coming from the north, that's not an issue, because you can see.
Got
it on
it.
the
What I was looking at was the house that's
Mhm.
there.
Mhm.
If we put too much yellow that they won't have any parking, people tend to get really upset
Yeah,
about
there,
that.
there are
Take
some
away any parking
trees,
in front of their home.
just to
So-
maybe have someone take a look at it to see.
Yeah, so I was looking at across the street before you plug on me to see if that was yellowed off at all. Because then they could park there and I don't think there'd be any issue. Go ahead.
You were talking about traffic. I'm a person that my car stays in the garage and I walk as much as I can. It's walker beware out there. I go to the traffic lights as much as I can. Last week, I was at the corner of Main and where Quick Trip and all that is. I almost got hit by 2 cars crossing the street once. I mean, it's like, you know, we talk about traffic congestion, the fact that people like cars. I like to walk. I would like to feel safe. Whenever I go on a walk, it's like I'm on hyper beware because every time I cross a road, I know that I really have to pay extra attention to get across that road safely. I don't have any answers, but I just want the pedestrian's point of view to be told here.
I'll chime in since that is, I live right there, and I've heard from other neighbors too that the Quick Trip corner is a very difficult corner to cross, and perhaps if there was some, I don't know if there's like a no right turn on red, which you hate to do because it's a really busy intersection, but I've experienced it and I know that my neighbors have.
I mean, I've gotten so I kind of do a dance there if I'm waiting for the light to turn just so people see me out there. I mean, I don't know what to do.
You have to carry your own stop sign.
It's got extra exercise in the dance, but I hear what you're saying, and as Hubby gets completed, and we're doing that whole study within that too, that we'll be able to see what the patterns are a little bit better, because that side of the street is blocked right now too, correct?
Yeah, but it's
So
not
you
only
have-
there.
I understand, I walk down
It's
there.
also the roundabout, it's every place. I mean, one time, there were 2 boys going across the roundabout, the same time I was. The car was waiting, but the car that came up beside it, the 2 boys on the bikes go across, and they didn't see me, and they almost hit me. I mean, I'm so tired of almost being hit. I mean, I feel I should have something and being put, not just on my arm every time they don't hit me.
So I'm not gonna ridicule you here, this is not a ridicule to you, correct? To be clear, because my wife tells me, always make eye contact with the driver.
I
Did
do,
you know
but-
that you have eye contact with them before you move? 'Cause
But-
we actually walk, we purposely walk, I come down Q, by where the high school is, we go down and I go through the roundabout for walks with my wife, and we come down Main Street to see what it's like for pedestrians. I have noticed that if I get to the thing and I'm in contact, and I take the step, they stop. If I don't look, that's where I'm in danger.
But
So
what I'm
always make
trying to
contact.
tell you is though, at that roundabout, there's a place for 2 cars side by side. The one was stopped, the other one came up when the boys were crossing and I was crossing behind them. The car closest to the stations didn't see me coming, they just assumed there were 2.
I completely get it, what you're saying, and it's the same thing. If you don't make eye contact with them,
But when you're already crossing, what do? Stand there and make eye contact with them? I don't get it.
Cross by the round.
they're in violation if they hit you.
Yeah.
You are, you have right
It's not
away.
gonna happen. What we're good does it do?
But I'm just saying, they're supposed to stop and be aware that there's pedestrians in the area. We can't make them.
Right, I realize that,
Tickets if
but we
they're
need to
present.
always consider all traffic patterns, not just of traffic, but also of pedestrians.
That
Sure.
roundabout is
Agreed.
very, very tight in
Tight,
a way.
yes.
You come off of 19 and you make a right-hand turn there to go up onto Q, and you're in that lane that lasts about this far before the other lane cuts right
Right.
into it. And it's like that on several sides of that roundabout.
Well, I also wanna say that I've seen people almost get hit when they're trying to cross, Main Street to O'Malley Street in the crosswalk. The cars coming around are coming so fast, and because of the growth there, you know, the vegetation that they planted, they don't see people in the crosswalk.
We had that complaint last year, we actually removed a bunch of the vegetation that was closest to the crosswalks.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's true over by Klein Drive too.
Yeah, and that's the
Yeah.
side where we took a bunch out.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it actually wasn't in the plan, the state mistakenly
It should
planned
be
it, so
lower.
we removed it. Sam?
It's also dangerous at Century and Fairview when people are flying out of the roundabout down the hill there too. I usually cross there to go to meetings and it's just,
Is Fairview the first right?
yes, the first right,
After
the
the railroad
sunset that
tracks?
goes to the pig. And there's a lot of pig workers that cross there and sometimes that can get.
I have heard the same
challenging.
thing, because I have people that I know that live in the 6 miles. The vision, when they're coming out in the morning, it's very difficult.
Oh,
to
yeah.
go left
It backs up, yeah.
on that, so I don't know, we may need to address something with that. With it.
These sorts of things are the type of stuff we'll forward to the chief of police, and he may have taken action, or may have planned action, or may put it on the watch list for his crew.
See, I think that it's been nice that there've been more signs put up about beware, you know.
It has been helpful.
Yeah.
In the crosswalk, but it's almost like you need them at almost every block around there because people are just, once they get around the
I've heard more in the wintertime than I do summertime, just to be honest.
Pardon?
I heard more in the wintertime than the summertime,
Yeah,
about all of our streets, just if there's a little slippery spots or whatever else, and
right.
people are close to the sidewalk or wherever, so.
Going back to kind of the Quick Trip area,
Okay.
my experience has been within the Quick Trip parking lot itself. Because you've got traffic coming in and off of Madison to go to the pumps. You've got it coming in from Main Street to go either into the store or to the pumps. You've got people leaving from behind the credit union in there. And you've got two entrances and exits to that corner. And you never know who's in front of you, next to you, or behind you when you're trying to move.
Yeah, your blood
It
pressure
would be
goes
so
up.
much easier, I think, in there if the parking stalls for the store itself were not straight on, but were angled. You could at least see something a little bit better. But it's not good no matter what, because you've got people coming in off of Madison, coming from behind the credit union, and then coming off of Main Street from either as a left turn or a right turn into there. It's very, very dangerous in there. I'm surprised that people
I think
haven't
people
gotten
are,
hurt.
I know, but I think they're pretty careful because it's.
They
such
have
a-
to be.
It's such a zoo there.
And you know, the pumps are right there. If anybody backs the wrong way, you're gonna take a pump down.
I think we've heard very good in terms of accident data, and
We
location.
can look at it.
Right.
We can see if there's.
I think everybody's really careful, because it's,
Okay.
oh, it's
Sam?
so busy.
And all the intersections on Main that don't really have traffic controls for pedestrians, could we put orange pedestrian flags out? Like what they have on Monroe Street, that, so it's easier for people to
Where?
get across?
I don't know.
Like on Monroe Street or in Mount
They
Horeb.
They did, but
that-
they didn't work. They quit doing it on
I think
Region.
There's-
we have
there's
It was
been-
too dangerous.
There's
I think we
been
have them in
cases-
Middleton too.
There's
At City
cases
Hall.
where if you provide an opportunity for that as a municipality, what you add is a serious issue of liability if somebody uses it or doesn't use it right. It ought not offer somebody a false sense of security
Correct.
to pick
That
up a
flag's
floating
not gonna
mug and cross
protect
the
you.
No, I
road.
don't think
It
that
doesn't
works.
remove the
I think
obligation of
we
the
had it
pedestrian
in City Hall.
to be extremely careful. So most communities have made it a policy not to put out features like that from a liability perspective. As nice as it would be, granted, I'd love for there to be more opportunity like that, but there's other concerns too. Some businesses have actually just done that on their own. They put their own little milk can on the sign and stuck flags in it. I don't know if we ripped that out if we saw it or not, but it wouldn't be municipally provided.
One of the, as everybody knows, the library is being built right now. We're looking at, I think we just approved the funding. Was it that?
What, for,
This past one? So next year,
I'm not
there's
sure on that,
There's
Chris.
a pad that's north of the, is this the bridge?
Right there.
Yeah, right through here. So it's all through here.
So then where does it cross?
And it crosses right across here, and you can go right downtown, this comes back behind the Village Homes.
Okay.
So you'll be able to get down through there, so you could technically, with your walk avoid it for your spot.
That would be nice.
So you'll actually be able to walk all the way from here to the library, one front of the library to up to here.
Could it ever go all the way over to 113?
So, go a little bit more that way. There's some problems with it. Mostly Creek, really, Creek and the hardest people to deal with in the world, who are they?
DNR.
No.
Neighbors. That's Lois, that's a good guess.
You never did, but
Concerns.
the railroad.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about them.
They somehow have more power than the federal government in general. But where the railroad crosses, or you see we're coming down here, to get over here, which is where we want to get to join the pass over here, we have to go under the railroad. So under, not over, because they won't allow us to go over. So right here where the creek goes under, that's where the potential for the path is to go under the railroad right next to the creek. So we're looking at the engineering of that. And guess what might happen there? Super duper expensive.
Yeah.
If that happens, that will probably hindered. So before we even move past where we're at, we'll be trying to get that done first. So that's one of the things I want to have is all of our trails to connect through all the communities. People can. They don't want to go to downtown, they can go around the downtown. That's a beautiful area to walk through with the creek and the tree lines and such. Now, I took some hits, sure for that, from where you going? I'm going to make you fall over.
Watch the traffic, Chris.
So, let's see, is this the library over here now?
Yep.
Okay, so these houses, okay, this part right here is village land, very own land. Okay? They don't necessarily like the fact that we want to put a path right there. Now, it's berm, this is a berm, so it's actually like 8 feet high, so you really won't, they won't really see the people there anyways, but they had a legitimate beef, because we haven't had that before. Their concern was wildlife, that we were going to disturb wildlife. DNR, we had the DNR look at this path, what we're going to do, they said we won't be disturbing the wildlife. So, I view them as the experts in the situation.
It's almost like the Pheasant Branch Conservancy kind of thing, concept.
A little bit.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So,
Great idea.
so that's funded up to the bridge, this one. And I think we'll approve this bridge too with that. The bridge is a little flat. It's not perfectly flat or not. So they have to correct that.
Okay.
So that's kind of, you were asking about the downtown, it's kind of the general vision, and that you were asking about, that's where I see things going out in the future.
That's very helpful, thank you.
The state, I think, is probably gonna knock on their door again at some point. What are they gonna knock on our door about? Four lanes, down Main Street.
And then it will look like Cross Plains where the stores are right up against the curb.
Then I don't, you know, we kinda had a citizen uprising before that, which was great, and it stopped it, but it does make for the traffic to be a little tight. Now, a lot heavier in signal lanes, so.
But
The lane's still gonna have the same thing, so.
But my point about planning for future growth and future traffic is, I know that you guys are very restricted with the railroad, but looking at where those patterns and those crossings are and identifying and keeping those so that you can put in nice straight connector streets is sort of what I'm looking for here, because that seems like it would be a very rational way to approach some planning.
You lost me. You lost
So,
me.
for example, Peaceful Valley Parkway, or is it Woodland and Arboretum? Can you go down maybe, please, Todd? So there's the connection that you could potentially make for across to Arboretum to get people to 113 there. But, of course, the railroad.
Oh, over here, you're
Yeah.
talking.
Of course, the railroad is in the way, right? So can we look at those points where we could potentially work with the railroad, and yes, it might take 10, 20 years, but to know these are the points in the railroad that we can potentially put these roads So we need to make sure when we are approving these new plots, that they are kept free.
So the county owns all this. Right now.
We had a plan at one point to make that connection, and the county learned of it and
Okay.
pursued conservancy acquisition
Okay.
to block it.
So that's, so to your.
Yeah,
your
okay, so
question,
that's
that was
helpful
actually
to know.
planned.
Yeah, that's helpful to know.
That was a while ago.
Yeah. I'm trying to name the name of the farm. That property, can't think of it right now. Anyhow, so yeah, you're right, that would have been a perfect solution for us coming through there. Same thing with Woodland Drive, I mean, that's, this whole area right here, that's why Woodland is so heavily traveled, I believe, because that is a connector out to the 13. Yeah, so to have a third would have been perfect.
So to come to one.
With that said, I would add, we're doing things like pursuing Peaceful Valley connection across.
No, but I'm
Oh,
sorry,
sorry.
so there's Woodland, I'm sorry, up to Arboretum Parkway.
Okay.
So we come through.
Yeah.
Right here.
Okay.
And then-
But it's also, you
You
can all put down that.
And you can also go down, correct,
Yeah.
on Woodland all the way.
Oh, yeah.
So. Okay.
What's gonna happen to the, you know, the old restaurant, the bowling alley, the
Opera
Smitty's
house.
place there? What's gonna happen to
The
that?
Opera House?
Yeah, right.
It's for sale.
No developers are wanting to buy that?
Well, since it's been on the market, there's been, I don't know, 6 or 7 people who've gone through it. I've gone through it myself, and there's some pretty serious issues in there, and health issues,
Yeah.
mold.
Mhm.
All the spilled
I-
beer.
I'm a little, I'm skeptical on whether there's gonna be a successful reuse of the existing building from what I saw. Now, I'm not a professional building inspector, but it was pretty hazardous. But of the 6 or so folks that I know who've gone through, they turned right back around. Actually, WNC looked at that as a potential facility, and they went in and threw it and quickly went back out.
It could almost be a brownfield grant area.
I don't know if, I'm not aware of contamination on the site. This is just like interior situations, water stuff that's damaged the walls and.
Yeah.
So you didn't mean Wamble, you meant.
Right,
Opera House,
right,
that used to have it as a-
yeah, right.
All right.
I'm going way back.
All right, we're all good, I just want to make sure.
Smitty's way back.
Okay, I have a question. It doesn't matter which way I walk, whether I go down 6 Mile Creek or Madison Street, there are some very dark areas in both of those areas. I take it that with the development of the library, that a lot of those lighting things might be addressed. I don't know what could even be done at 6 Mile Creek. I can't even tell you where it is, but there is one large area there that when you walk, it's really dark, which I was looking to see where the lights were, and I was like, it was strange that there wasn't a light in a certain place, but I don't take care of those things. But I just wanted to make sure that the lighting situation on Madison Street will be better once the library is put in.
Okay. Okay. Don't take this wrong way. Do you have a smartphone? Okay.
Sorry,
I want to come and visit you then, and we're gonna go for a walk.
in the dark, so I can show you where it
We don't need to
is.
go in the dark, we just
Okay.
need to go, because when the one key app, where you are, if you report something, it gives us the location, so I
Oh,
would know
okay.
where the lighting is at then.
Okay,
That you're
well,
talking about,
Or
so we
just-
can report that.
Or just give us a call, or one utilities call. If there's an area that seems surprisingly dark, like it just sticks out like a sore thumb at night,
there is.
let us know, and maybe there is a plan for a lighting improvement at some point.
Okay, well, I figured it wouldn't happen until the road was redone.
People that live there will either love you or hate you for that.
Well, probably maybe.
Just depends.
So which way that bulb is flying?
Yeah, that's probably right. So, other questions, concerns? Any questions about the library, where we're at with it? Any
Yeah,
questions?
where is it? How are we doing with the library?
We're doing very well with the library. Everything's going on schedule right now. The water that everybody else had, they were able to work through, and they've been moving forward without any delays. I don't think Humphrey can say anything, but.
What's
I
that?
don't think the Hubby project can say the same thing, they have a little different situation in there, but so they're a little bit behind where they want to be, but the library's pretty good.
When will the Hubby project, when is it supposed to be finished? I mean, is it 2 years, 3, I mean, how long is it?
Almost consistent with when the library's supposed to be done.
Late summer next year.
Late
Oh,
summer.
okay.
Yeah.
I know that, isn't there, like a competition, like for the Dane County libraries, that, I know a number of years ago, the library in, I think Monona was named, like a championship Dane County Library of the Year for design and, the way it looked, its architecture, and I don't know if this is something that, I have no idea what the Wanakee Library is gonna look like. Eventually I've seen, the schematic drawings ahead of time, but I don't know if that's something that,
Have you been over by it lately?
not lately, no, I have
If-
not.
If you go over, you can kind of see what the design will look like right now. It's all laid out, all the steel's up, they put up a lot of different things, so you can see what the size of it's gonna be
Yeah.
and how it sits on the property as well.
That's gonna be exciting.
Yeah.
Any plans for the old library?
Sure.
Sell it.
There's several that were interested in it. You wanna talk about that, or the daycare that was
Well,
interested in it?
while we're going, we'll put up a little,
There's people that are
recent.
Yes, Frank.
I'm wondering where we're at with the retention pond and the issue with it having been a landfill. How's the cleanup going on that?
It was a construction material fill. Wasn't like garbage, producing methane. It was construction material and debris. It's gone.
So it's cleaned up?
Got it out, removed it,
Okay.
threw it away in the right place.
So that's one of our board members, Joseph Zilberger, did this. Just to put a drawing up there, so you can see where.
The existing library, too early necessarily to put a sign on it for sale, but I have talked.
He bought that.
Yeah. I have spoken with interested parties, commercial users. The first approach though was to the school district to see if it made sense for them, and it didn't. The age of the building and the lack of sprinkler systems makes it really expensive to retrofit for educational purposes to meet those code requirements. So my guess is gonna be a commercial user with a bright idea that dovetails really well with the age of the population right there. So you could probably think of what middle schoolers or high schoolers typically make use of. Chris likes to imagine an orthodontist making a lot of sense. Yes, I visited with an orthodontist who's gone through the property, so.
Maybe a vape shop.
What's that?
Hope it isn't a vape shop.
I think zoning might help us with that.
Bait shop?
Vape.
I get Lodi a lot. Lodi's main force.
Yeah, around the corner.
Yeah, they got the vape shop as their, and by the way, if you go into Stock, their first one is tobacco and vapor.
Yep.
As you come across the bridge.
Yep.
Which is interesting that.
If I was able to achieve a dream with the old library building, I would turn it into a youth center. I think that's an aspect of service that you don't have here.
Oh, yes.
Who delivers that service? School, nonprofit, village, private entity? I don't know the answer, but for the kids who are in between starting to gain independence, but not able yet to drive their own car, that's a lost population, and that would be a great.
A lot of kids that go to the library after school, I mean, you can watch them walk over there from the high school. Once the high school's out at 3:30, and they head to the library and hang out there, study for a couple hours until their folks pick them up.
We have already talked, by the way, about possibly a school bus shuttle that'll take students from the campus to the new library.
Really?
Because
That's a great idea.
that's a major use, and that's quite a haul for kids to.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the traffic across Main Street again to.
Yeah, like getting across Main safely.
That's a great idea.
Water, before, about the water.
Uh-huh.
On the Legion side and this side, we actually have ponds on, over where this parking lot's gonna be over here. There's one on this side down here, and then over here with the Hubby project. So there's actually two significant ponds there.
And maybe, there you see it, back there's a pond here.
Yep, right
Pond
here,
here.
here, and then there's here.
We don't want it flooded.
So up in here, yes. So there's good areas for water to go. And
Yeah.
for this, that we don't have to
basement in the library. It's built on helical piers, so this is quite unbelievable. Adam and I walked the site when they put these in, but along the footings, there are 130 big column piers drilled down into the stone system
Really?
that support the foundation, and then some of the internal columns. Because it's soft soil,
Yeah.
so these things go down like a corkscrew, and then they push pressure out on the rocks and the soil, which then causes pressure inward, and then really firms in place those piers. So that's how this, instead of really deep footings, it's a normal footing with very deep piers.
So there's no basement, nothing below ground?
Basement. No, just the
Perfect.
lowest thing is the elevator shaft.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Oh.
That's gonna be a beautiful area.
The road, is gonna come in and it's gonna come around the building,
Oh.
and then exit over here too.
Other side of the pond.
And this? Sorry.
That's up here.
Sorry.
Yep.
Sorry, where the basketball courts and stuff were.
Oh,
And then this all area, will be all green area.
There's a park that's, little neighborhood park is gonna be put
Right
here.
here.
Wow, it's gonna be beautiful.
Yes, it is.
So then are the retention areas will be made so that they look like they're part of the landscaping, part of the, yeah, okay.
There are prairie grasses planned around, probably on the slopes, and then some other areas of the surface are gonna be prairie.
Okay.
Oh, that'll be good.
Grocery store?
Yeah, that's right.
I was just waiting for the question.
We're not hungry.
Not hungry? So we want to go to the restaurant, not restaurants then. Okay, thanks for coming. Grocery store is on hold at this point. Hy-Vee could be coming, it might not be coming. It just depends on what we can get for an agreement with the developer.
Now, Hy-Vee is not the one the village, Hy-Vee already negotiated a deal with the developer for purchase of land. We're negotiating with the developer, the guy who's buying the land from the landowner, which is not Hy-Vee.
I was at the meeting when you were talking about, you thought that the land prices were too high? Is that what?
Yep, the village board is concerned about using TIF in a way that artificially and dramatically inflates land value.
Right.
And that they're concerned about that use, that particular strategy. So that's been conveyed to the owners. The village board offered some parameters for staff in negotiating that issue with them, and that's what we're in the midst of doing now.
Thank you.
Who owns that land right now?
What's that?
Who
Land is
owns
owned
that
by,
land?
land is owned by John Ganser, that's public knowledge.
Like what?
John Ganser
Oh,
owns the
okay.
property. The developer is for Development Group, who's trying to buy the land from Mr. Ganser, and I think Todd said it very well, because it was kind of a statement that I made to the developer. Was that the land is, no, we weren't gonna use $10 to artificially inflate land prices, which we have in our timeline. So, until we get past that, or the landowner will agree to whatever they want to do with the developer, Hy-Vee can't do anything. Hy-Vee's not looking for general assistance, if that was one of the concerns of them. They are not looking for it.
The Hy-Vee use and the design that some of you maybe seen in the paper, the village board and the plan commission really do like. They're in favor of that. Just the terms of the deal have to match up.
Rich Whipperford isn't against Hy-Vee coming in. He's just questioning the TIF funding.
TIF funding.
Right.
And, you know, he believes in fair competition.
He was that for Century when he started.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I've talked to Rich many times, and he says, I'm not against a grocery store coming in. I'm just questioning how it comes in. So.
So, to be clear, there's no request for any type of assistance. They negotiated their land price with the developer. It's the developer that has the TIF request. So, that's really what it's.
Although you can pick how you wanna.
You can figure out how that all.
Yeah.
Correct. So they're not, I mean, I don't keep up. Remember I said I couldn't talk, well, certainly I keep up. So that's about the grocery store. department for all of you. If there are any others.
Aisha would want me to ask, are you guys still considering a teen center on that site of the old library, Todd, or is that going to a different purpose?
The old library?
Yes.
As I said earlier, that'd be a spectacular dream for us to achieve.
Okay.
The question is, who would deliver that service? Is it feasible? We did include in our pro forma for funding the existing library a successful sale of the old one. We had an appraisal done, it came in at 1.1 million. We do have, I think we put 800,000 or something like that as a ballpark figure within our new library construction financing pro forma.
Okay, that's fine.
But I would adore that use there.
You need something like we had when we were growing up. We had 2 places where you could go on the way home from school. The Triangle, which is the beauty parlor now, but there was another little place in the basement on Main Street called the Chew and Chatter. And they were just great places where kids could go and hang out and have something to eat and play some games and stuff like that.
Mary Ellen, I wish I could download your brain.
I
to
know,
my
I love
computer
that
right
name,
here.
the Chew
Oh,
and
it was.
Chatter.
It was Benny Brzezinski is the one that did that.
What
Well,
he had is
it was
a basement.
our space, there were never any adults in there. And the kids were just, it kept a campus, a place to gather.
Is on the lower level.
Yeah, games and food, that's all you need.
There is a group of parents who have an interest in, they've been talking more about programming, but they've been, Sue McDade has facilitated some conversations with a handful or 2 of adults who see that need as well. I think they've engaged some folks in the school district in discussion about, well, basically asking, what can we do? So there's a small, call it a grassroots discussion at this point, and I would support it if I had a choice.
So that comes down to funding. Where does funding come from? I mean, everybody in the room in the village generally says they're excited when taxes go up. So,
Nobody caught
there's-
it.
There's things that if you want to do them, they're gonna
Well, Mike has a pretty good history of fundraising for things
So-
they really want.
Yep.
Yes, and our community does an unbelievably good job of supporting events, having things for all demographics in our community. I think there's anybody that's missed. So whether the senior center closed up, or other center closing up to private entities. Oktoberfest just happened for.
Oh, that was successful.
All of our events this year, that I can think of, had perfect weather.
Yeah. God's on our side.
Literally, and we had so much rain and stuff during that time. The fact that we were able to get weather
Quite a lot.
for all of them is amazing. And so we're blessed here for that, I guess. You're doing a good job, Todd.
We built the dome over the village just in
Dome.
time.
The dome, yeah.
As long as we don't have butterflies coming and quartz rocks that glow. That was the TV show, The Dome.
Oh, right. Any other questions or comments or anything that you need from me at this time? Happy to.
When's that new state mandatory assessments or tag, we go to 100%? What's there to be done?
Next
Yeah,
year.
we
budgeted
approved the
for it.
revale already. It's gonna be coordinated through the winter and early next year. So this is gonna be the last year. This tax bill that you'll be getting is gonna reflect, call it old version of your assessments, and all properties will be reassessed for next year's tax bill.
Are they're gonna come around again, I mean, to come into the?
This revaluation is called a market rate adjustment, which the state allows once in the cycle. So we did a full-blown inspection process last time, what was that,
Just a few years ago.
7 years,
Yeah.
7 years ago. We're already below 90% on the assessment ratio. So they allow you, though, to basically use computer modeling and actual sale data with some inspections, not all inspections, but but some particular ones, to then apply an assessment adjustment throughout the community based on neighborhood-specific conditions and other things. So that will be the process we'll undertake. Remember, generally when a revaluation happens, especially in a community that has good things happening, your property value goes up. But there is a corresponding tax rate that goes down. Because the amount of money that we seek to collect doesn't change. We're still providing the same service. So, we'll certainly work a lot of education on that because it can be very confusing. But that process will be kicking off early next year.
So has anybody heard what our valuation went up this last year percentage-wise? Anybody heard that?
Yeah, our equalized value was 9.4%.
9.4%. So most of them, when you hear of TIF, and you guys are gonna do a great job explaining it to whoever from the county, when we look in the forecast, we usually use very conservative numbers, 2.5%, 3% for growth. And we've been consistently exceeding that. So our value of our village continues to grow at this point.
We're just a nudge in front, a couple percentage points in front of Dane County average. There's other communities that are in front and more than us behind.
Which helped us, I'm not saying we're gonna spend the money, don't take it that way. But when we were doing the library, one of the things that the board has had in place for many, many years is not borrowing more than half of what we can borrow, according to state. We were concerned we were gonna dip over that just for basically half a year. Because of our valuation, we actually cleared $5.5, $6 million additional that if we needed to borrow
yes,
for,
yeah.
we'd have that, because we didn't have any space to borrow anything. Until that valuation took place. So we're keeping it, we're in good shape financially from the village perspective right now. And keeping up with paying our bills, making sure we have the growth. At a nice rate as opposed to a booming rate, which can get us in trouble. So if we're adding 300-400 new homes in a year and all the roads and everything that goes with it, so we've been bumping up our budget as we grow. I've been talking about that a lot in our meetings and making sure if we add roads, whatever percentage road we have, we need to add that for maintenance of the roads too. Because you're gonna have to have maintenance for them. And if you don't
That's
have
Wisconsin, we don't maintain our roads.
roads, you know, it's amazing how much complaints, you know, that if you don't have the road, people are gonna complain. And we had Woodland Drive was a little bit of a roller coaster going on. That was, when did we do that, 9, 10 years ago? When that was done? 8 years ago? So you would think that it would last longer than that. And the state had done the part of that, and they had used some different materials, some old concrete, crushed it as opposed to regular gravel. And they got that water may have gotten into that. I'm not an engineer, so don't do that, but that's what caused it. So now they're trying to do an easier fix than spending all the money to redo it again, which was basically put some fill underneath there, put some blacktop in and press it down. And in the area that they did it, it seems to be much better. On the other side, still is not, but that's also Westport and Wanakee. That's not just Wanakee. So then
I'm not holding my breath. We'll see what happens.
we're not holding our breath.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens with winter. Because it's a fraction of the cost of what, I mean, really, literally a fraction of what we'd have to spend, to see if it works. And if it doesn't work, then we'll have to look at that as another larger budget item.
I did find one answer, Woodland Crest, or Woodland West, that neighborhood, the Cheney neighborhood, 189 single-family units, and then there's 6 acres set aside for 225 multifamily, potential apartment of some sort. 225 on 5.6 acres, 189 single family on 40 acres.
So our policy in the village, does everybody know what the policy is? Not more than 25% of the village can be in multifamily. So if we're at that number, there's money will be approved.
Yeah, we didn't zone it for multifamily yet. That's the concept. That's the concept plan. It sits in ag at this point. So when they come forward with the rezoning, that's when the calculation is done. Is weight as to whether it be approved or not.
And with the housing study going on, that'll be a big part of seeing what we have and how things fit together.
Yeah, that's definitely part of what we want to study.
Which, by the way, Thursday is the first meeting for the housing committee. Everybody's invited to attend as we go through that.
Do you say tomorrow or Thursday?
Thursday.
Thursday, in the